So now we have the secondary animation on the feet, and they look a lot more natural. To walk you through the back step, what I have here is as the foot comes forward let's go back there so I select it so you know which one it is, this one. What we have done is plant that heel before the toe. Alright, then you get a little drag on the toe. The toe follows the foot follows the leg through. Then that foot stays flat on the ground, and as it reaches the extreme pose, then it's going to start to come forward. You got a toe bend here, keep that toe flat on the ground, but your foot goes first and then your toe follows. So as you lift that foot up off of the pavement, make sure that you get a nice toe drag on that foot. Also rotated the foot back and comes through. So let's take a look at that again. Both feet are in action. Alright, if you haven't done it in a while, save your work and we'll go on to the arm and how to get the secondary motion going on the arm. Alright, so again we want to make sure that we're dragging the movement. The arm comes forward, then the hand should drag backward. It's going to get there after the arm. So what we're going to do is find that extreme pose. So 5 to 10, and then we're going to drag that arm back, or excuse me, the hand back a little bit, just as a beginning to create that secondary motion. Getting a good hand pose on, we'll get that here in just a moment, but we're just working on keying in the movement. Now in that same regard, you've got the opposite hand, the arm is going in the opposite direction. So again, I'm going to do this more extreme than I normally would, but I'm going to drag that hand going that direction. Dragging, just as soon as it gets there and the arm begins to go the opposite direction, then you're going to want to get a different direction on that hand. So we're going to go ahead and flip it to go the other direction so you can see that movement trailing. I'm going to do the same thing on the other hand. It begins to be dragged in the different direction there. So going forward and flip, going back the other direction. It's a fully down pose and it's going to be opposite this direction. This arm is pulling this hand and that arm is pulling that one in the opposite direction. And then of course 25 is the mirror of the first pose, which is a down pose. So if we play that initial change, let's go ahead and see how that looks. Yeah, you're getting a little movement in there. Now let's go ahead and make that a little bit more extreme. Flip back the other way. What we want to do now is find poses for our hand that look nice and natural in these up and down poses. So let's go ahead and do that. It's actually a lot more simple than you think it would be. Let's see. I'm going to flip back that way. Good. Okay. So we've got an up hand here. And I'm going to go to my perspective view so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to grab all the end effectors for this particular hand. And rather than a straight hand like this, we're going to give it a nice natural pose. I'm going to go click my down arrow in my interface and select all of my fingers. If I select all of them, I can rotate those in a very systematic fashion all at one time. But that does not make a natural looking pose. Okay, that's the beginning, but it's not natural looking. So now what we want to recognize is that fingers will trail the palm. So what we want is to create a natural looking pose in this movement, keeping the movement in mind. Now my fingers actually go toward the center. If they're curled, as much as they're curled, they're going to go more toward the center of each other. So what I'm going to do is now go ahead and curl those in toward each other. And you can see just in that one move, that feels a lot more natural. I'm going to rotate this one in and this one in a little further. Alright. Now, depending on the attitude of your character, you may want to, women tend to drag the pinky even more. Men will have a separation between the index finger, and so we might see something a little bit more like that, a little space on there. Alright, so remembering that the fingers are dragging behind the hand, so if this is their natural pose, we're going to actually drag them all the opposite direction a little bit. So I'm going to click on those and rotate those back so that they appear to be trailing the hand. And of course you want to involve that. I'm going to pull this pinky in just a little bit more. You want to involve the thumb in this pose as well. Thumb is going to get somewhat buried because that is dragging, and the arc of motion of that wrist is coming forward. Alright, so that looks a lot more natural than that one for this particular pose, but I'm also going to consider that I need a little bit of a rotation here to make it look even more natural. There we go. Alright, so all of that having been keyed into that pose, now I'm going to take a look at the back pose, which is going to be completely different because it's dragging in the opposite direction. So we're going to have a thumb that may look more outsplayed. Okay, I'm going to select all of these and curl those in. Alright, and I'm going to arc those in for a little bit more natural movement, but the movement is back, so I'm going to arc them in this direction. And not forgetting the direction of the wrist, it actually needs to rotate in the opposite direction. Alright, so there we go. And we can just replicate similar hand positions for the opposite, which is this one. But you can see already how natural that is flowing. You get an instant drop, and as they sway the opposite way, you can even make these pretty dramatic poses on the down. Remember, these hands are not going to be down like the pose is now. They're going to be dragging along with the movement. So as we drag that back, okay, this is the hand I'm looking at, then it needs to be dragging in this location as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and correct the other hand while we're here. That, of course, is being dragged the opposite way. Alright, so let's go ahead and get our poses on our hands and take another look at the secondary when we finish that and come back I'm going to take a pause, and we will be back in the next section. We will take a look at interpenetrating surfaces and correcting for that.